extension to the conservation area looks to include the community facilities of the shop and the playground to the west, which contribute to the rural character of the settlement and are key part of the settlement's character. Though they may not be historic, they do form part of the settlement, and extend to include the former estate of East Court and part of the Pilgrim's Way to the east. Obviously, Pilgrim's Way, as I think everyone knows in this room, is of high historical importance of itself. So again, we hope that you will accept this review and the revised boundary changes and allow Councillor Harwood to have the delegated power to approve and adopt the changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction again. Could I ask if anyone has any points they'd like to raise on this one? No? If not, I would then like to propose the recommendations on page 56. So we've got the two recommendations. The first one, that it be adopted as a material planning consideration. And the second one, the proposed boundary extension to the Detling Conservation Area be agreed in accordance with page 12 of Appendix 3 to the report, and the Head of Development Management to be given authority to undertake the necessary steps to publicise this in accordance with planning, listed buildings and conservation areas Act 1990 regulations. So it's a bit of a mouthful. Is everybody in support of that? Yeah, thank you. And takes us on to page 94, which is the Otham Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan and Boundary Extension. Again, over to you, Janice.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this was a review of an original conservation area appraisal, which included a review of the boundary of the existing conservation area. The proposed enlargement allows for the protection of the views and the historical connection between the church and the historic core of the village, and this will protect the medieval settlement pattern that still remains and pick up some of the larger estate houses to the south. While the proposal is large, we do consider that this is a justified extension to protect the medieval settlement pattern. And again, we hope that you'll accept this review and the revised boundary changes to allow Councillor Harwood to have the delegated power to approve and adopt the changes. Thank you.
Okay, before I ask for any other comments, I was looking at the map, which is on page 104 and then effectively repeated on page 113, which is the extension area. And it misses out the new estate which is being built around where the church is. So if we look at it below Wellington, we've got that new estate, I think, being built there, isn't it? Yeah, so perhaps when it's before it's sort of finalised, if we could just get an updated map which just shows that, because it helps give the context of the church and so on, and probably strengthens the case for drawing the boundary where it's suggested. Any comments from any members on that thought at all? No? Well, if not, I'd like to, if we go to page 95, we've got the two recommendations before us. The first one is that the Conservation Area Appraisal Management Plan Guidance Document at Appendix 3 be adopted as a material planning consideration. And secondly, I'm not going to read everything out because it's the same wording as before, except it says Otham Conservation Area. So if everybody is happy with that, can we just agree to adopt them? Yeah, great, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Clark.
So now we've done those three, I do have a question on the update.
Yeah, right.
If before you move to the next slide,
yeah.
Which is my own ward, which is Lewes and Linton, is showing that it's under the camp programme for 2025, and there are 4 others. I just wondered what sort of time frame that would be. It's not listed on the forward plan earlier in this document.
I'm actually currently almost finished writing Lewes and Tobble, which will be coming to the parish council shortly.
Okay,
I was hoping it was going to be out a couple of weeks ago, but I got caught on other aspects, I'm afraid. So
okay.
it will be imminent.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we can go on to, oh, sorry, Claire.
Sorry to be a pain. Just going on from that, I'm not saying that Coxheath is the most conservation friendly area in the world, but what would that come under? Is that there? Because there are older places and there is heritage there. I was just wondering which area that came under, or does it not as yet?
I don't think we've actually got a conservation area there. So if it's something that you think we should consider, then we can have a look at it and sort of take that on further. I can make a note.
So any other questions on the update? And I think Councillor Cleves raised a good point. If anybody thinks there are any areas in the borough which aren't on this list of conservation areas, which we think the officers should look into, to make sure that you let Janice know, because you know, we all know our areas. There may be small areas within them which might be suitable for conservation status. Which now, so if we can now go on to item number 14, which starts on page 129, which is the CIL Bidding Round 2. And I think Councillor Tony Harwood's going to introduce that to us.
Yeah, very similar to the CIL charging. What essentially we've decided is to not waste time and money on bureaucracy, but actually to reaffirm the document that we agreed in 2019, which is slightly updated and attached as an appendix to the report, which starts on page 129. But if I bring Mr. Jarman in, he can give the technical background as to why that decision has been made. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Harwood. So the reason why we're recommending that the council enters into a second CIL bidding round is simply, I think it goes back to one of your earlier points, Councillor Russell, that we built up over £5 million. And as Councillor Spooner always reminds me, obviously the more houses you build, the more that's putting a burden on infrastructure, and then more there's a need to actually spend the monies. It's at your discretion as to what you spend that CIL money on. But the CIL bidding round 2 is purely administrative. The governance, the actual procedures were agreed over 5 years ago. It's in the appendix. And in very straightforward terms, what we're saying to you is, you know, this council has built up a pot of CIL money, and we recommend that you, well, to be honest, start spending it.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to Appendix 2. So the Cabinet did have a discussion around the sort of bids that we want to see and what we'd like to see prioritised when they come in. So we've ranked the areas that we would prefer to spend the money on, just to make sure that it you know, the people putting the bids in are cognizant of that, and you know, we want to see investment in water cycles, active transport, climate change, nature recovery, and so forth, in that kind of order, just to give those outside bodies a sense of where we want this money to go.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Russell and Councillor Forecast and Councillor Spooner and Councillor Keeley.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely, start the bidding. I think we need to get some infrastructure. I am wary that we still have the bit parked from KCC from the Bearsted Road improvements, where we did give them the money last time and said spend it, and then it didn't get done. But I know that that's still ring fenced to give it back at a certain point. So I just want to make sure that's not the same money as this. That's an extra CIL pot that at the moment, I checked that with Carol Williams, is separately waiting for that to come back again, which is excellent. So yes, open the bidding for the rest of this money. My issue is with Appendix 2 and the prioritisation. Absolutely, I think it's the absolute, I cannot be clearer, the absolute wrong priorities. I never have one resident say to me, all of these houses are built, yet where is my nature recovery? I never have a resident say to me, all of these houses you've built here, where is my water cycle investment? None. And I have canvassed loads recently and I've heard none, zero. I hear well, it's actually not an argument, this is my comment, you can reply in a minute. I hear the arguments over where are the roads that get me around Maidstone, where I want to get to quickly? Where are the schools that my kids can go to? Where are the GPs? Every single comment is GP. Now, I know that someone will come back with, you can build it and they may not come, but I would sooner build a facility that we could perhaps transform into some kind of a pharmacy or a slightly lesser ranked health facility within the community than build an area for nature recovery when we're using the money for the houses that's been spent. I think we should ask the residents what they would like us to spend it on, and I think it's very clear that these are the wrong priorities. The priorities in 1.14, which is the strategic, sit on page 100 and I don't know, I've got 2 page numbers, I think it's 140, that says strategic CIL can only be spent on infrastructure as identified in the 2008 Planning Act, which defines infrastructure as roads and other transport facilities, flood defences, schools and other educational facilities, medical facilities, sporting and recreational facilities, and open spaces is absolutely the list. And I think we've gone quite far away from that by the time we've reached Appendix 2, and I completely disagree with that.
I don't know if Councillor Harwood or Councillor Jeffries would like to respond.
I'm very happy to come back on that. We obviously talk to very different people on the doorstep, because I get that charge all the time. What are you doing about nature? What are you doing about climate change? So we obviously have very different constituents, and frankly, we were elected to run this council, and these were the priorities that we went forward with as part of that campaign. So we are reflecting what the public has asked us to do. So no, we won't be going out to ask the people in a referendum about the priorities. We've been elected to deliver for nature and for people, and this is how we're going to do it.
I would just like to see then how and I'd like a written response on how the Cabinet think that the priorities in Appendix 2 fall under this CIL infrastructure, which is identified in the 2008 Planning Act, which clearly has defines the various types of infrastructure, clearly doesn't mention a lot of these things.
Councillor Forecaster.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to sort of echo the concerns of my colleague, Councillor Russell, really. Active and sustainable travel, will that include highway improvements?
Yes, you do need highway improvements to improve active and sustainable travel, clearly. They might not be the highway improvements that you might want to see to put more cars on the road, but that's the opposite of active and sustainable travel. So they certainly,
I can't
but it does change the highways, it does improve the highways, yes.
Okay. But in terms of cars particularly, is that excluding improvements to the roads to allow further cars? Obviously, more houses equals more cars. That's the way it is.
The amount of money we've got will not make a huge enough difference to widen large bits of road anyway. But actually, widening roads simply encourages more cars. And what we've got is you can shake your head all you like. It's a matter of fact. So what we need to do is get people alternatives to driving everywhere. You and I both border Hermitage Lane. It is a disaster and it's getting worse by the minute. What we can't do is widen Hermitage Lane to get more traffic down it, because it will just pour more traffic into the town and cause an even bigger disaster. We've got to get alternatives for people to travel around the town. And we want bids on that basis, so that people who do have to drive can get places easily and quickly, but those who don't have to drive can use other ways of getting around.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, that's that point covered. In terms of community facilities, I presume that's joint forth with green spaces. Would doctors and medical facilities come under that that subject? Yeah. So for this council, climate change and adaptation and nature recovery is more important than new medical facilities.
As we've said a minute ago, we can build all the medical facilities we like. We are building one in Maidstone East, a large one. There is another one going in Sutton Valence, I think. They are going in. There is money for them. We've got another one destined for Heathland. So they are being built through different routes. What we are missing is some of the other bits that we've put on here that don't naturally end up in developer plans, which is why we want to prioritise them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm if they're built, I'm not saying that you can. It's not all in your power to get them, but if a bid comes forward for climate change improvement, whatever that bid would be, I don't know, and a medical facility, is the climate change bid more important to this cabinet?
It depends on the bids, but there is we would like stuff on climate change, but if the bid itself is bad, then clearly it won't get as high a priority as something as a medical facility that is really good. Yeah. But you know, the weightings, this is about weighting and preference, not about the bids themselves. We need to wait and see what the bids are.
Of course, but broadly, the climate change bid is perceived as better broadly than community facilities.
In terms of this CIL bidding round, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next I've got Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to go back to basics here. CIL and 106 agreements and the money they raise are to help provide the infrastructure for new development that is taking place in the borough. Land which has been allocated development on the local plan, land which is being built and changes are being made to it. I looked at this list and I was absolutely horrified. I can understand people wanting roads. They're concerned about congestion. They want schools, doctors, dentists. The idea of CIL money being sent to the underperforming privatised water companies to up their game, presumably, and to the, I could say, inept Environment Agency and KCC, who control land drainage, I think is an absolute, it's a sort of misdirection of objectivity. That's the only way I can describe it. I can fully understand the active and sustainable travel. Yes, we need to go for that. But I fail to see, going on a bit further, public gypsy and traveller sites. Well, they are development in their own right. You know, they do not help provide the new housing we're providing, the new employment sites we're providing. So I would like just to clarify the status of this schedule. It has been done as from an informal cabinet meeting. So therefore it has no status. It has no relevance to any of the documents that we're going to be sending out. And I would like to propose that this schedule should not form part of any publicity or any document that the Borough Council is going to propose or send out with its information to people about the CIL programme.
Right, so we've got an amendment proposed by Councillor Spooner and seconded by Councillor Russell. Should we debate? Should we just do that before we go back on the rest of the point? Well, I think the wording is basically to delete Appendix 2 on page 151. And that doesn't form part of what goes forward to the cabinet, and that's roughly right, isn't it?
I mean, having said that, I'm quite happy with the recommendations as in the papers. I just want this schedule removed.
Yeah, that's what he said. Okay, so I think we need to. I'll come back to. I mean, at the moment, I've got also Councillor Keeley and Councillor Clark to speak, but I think we need to address the amendment first, and then I'll go back to Councillor Keeley and Clark. So, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the amendment at all? Yeah, Councillor Conyard.
In regards to the amendment, just my understanding, if we take it out, since it's going to cabinet anyway, these are the priorities where those will be decided, so it may have no material change. So if we vote for the amendment, fine, it doesn't go out as part of the appendix, but the decision is primarily the same. Is that correct? That's Stuart, Tony, if you could.
Well, just remember that the committee is advisory rather than, we would, I feel fairly confident we'd have to have a conversation amongst the cabinet, but I would be very uncomfortable not having this table coming to the full cabinet meeting. It relates to the corporate plan. It's, you know, it's what we want to do. So I do hope that you reject their suggestion.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the appendix, it's a suggested priority areas. I don't think it's going to exclude anything coming forward. We would encourage anyone that's got a community scheme to come forward. Hopefully, we'll get a rich list of various different suggestions that may fall outside of this, and they can be considered. So, it's a suggested priority area. So I don't have a problem with that at all. But I'd also like to point out the fact that we've got these items under which we can look at whether or not something is appropriate or not. But we've also got the statutory consultees in planning, and let's face it, separate to this, KCC highways are a statutory respondee in planning. It's not as if we can go ahead and build 100,000 houses and say we absolutely don't want any traffic measures, because at the end of the day, that statutory consultee will say, if this is planned in this area, this will need to happen, and they will give that feedback. The NHS would do exactly the same. So I don't see this excluding any of those statutory consultees coming forward in planning, and there will be a dramatic impact on planning if a statutory consultee says we would object to this if this wasn't the case. So I think that we're sort of we're going round the reeking a little bit here, but I have no problem with a suggested priority list.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to perhaps ask a question which relates to the amendment. I mean, if we look on page 131, which shows that in the first round we did in 2022, there was £3 million. The bulk of it obviously went to the M20 Junction 7 upgrade, which, as it says, we're waiting for the Bearsted Road improvements to finish before that proceeds. So the other two items actually I would have thought would pretty well fit within this sort of appendix layout, because I mean, Heather House obviously had just under £1 million, and then St Faith's Community Centre. So those two of the three schemes which went ahead then would have met the criteria being proposed now. I just cognizant really that the amount of money we've got available. If we think that the Junction 7 upgrade, our proportion of it then was £1.8 million a couple of years ago. I mean, we could spend, I'm not saying, but I suppose it's not impossible. KCC could put in a couple of bids which would use up more than we've actually got available, because the actual CIL pot at the moment is relatively small. And I would have thought things like community centres, such as Heather House and St Faith's, or their equivalents elsewhere in the borough, might be, a better way of doing it. And one final question, just to clarify a point. In terms of water, I assume that we're not necessarily looking at schemes which would be undertaken by the water companies. It'd be more likely perhaps things done by the Upper Medway Internal Drainage Board, for which I was a member with John Perry for a couple of years before that changed, because they're responsible for the sort of drainage of the large rural areas. So could you perhaps just clarify, it wouldn't be the water company?
So we've got a series of examples there: wastewater infrastructure, highway runoff mitigation, SUDS sort of thing, enhanced treatments, wetlands. So there's a mixture there, and I think Councillor Spooner raised the point about not wanting to invest in a failing water company. I think the phrase was used. I may have misheard that. But I don't see any difference in many respects between investing or working with investing in the water company itself than investing in KCC or giving the money to KCC to build roads, because they're responsible for building roads. We're just trying to encourage different bits of infrastructure to come forward. So I don't see any actual distinction other than the water companies are private and the KCC is public. So yes, it's a mixture. Whatever comes forward, anything that basically improves our water cycle.
Councillor Russell, and then I'll move to the vote.
Thanks. Oh, I'm the seconder, so shall I wait till Councillor Keeley then? No. Shall I sum up? Yeah, sum up for the amendment then? Or does someone else want to speak on it? Okay, I'll sum up then in a minute.
Sorry, we're speaking on the amendments at the moment, that we basically delete Appendix 2, which is page 151, from what we recommend Cabinet to adopt. So if that's, yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, please. Just this is suggested priority and it's not exclusive. So anybody that's got anything particular that doesn't seem to come under that, they would not be deemed less, that they might not be what the priorities are as such, but they wouldn't be deemed any less. And that's not I'm not explaining that very well, sorry, because I've got myself confused with what we're talking about. But things that don't come under that still have a fair chance of being considered, is what I want to know, please. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Harwood, did you want to say anything before I take?
Thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, I think there's some kind of political mischief being done here. I mean, we all know about Section 106 and about CIL that relates specifically to developments and consuming their own smoke, if you like. And we permitted the Maidstone Borough Council scheme recently that provides for medical facilities and green space and so on. But that's coming forward as part of that development. This is the kind of top sliced cash, if you like, that's going into a pot, so you identify projects. I think that the appendix that's being talked about, it just reflects priorities within the agreed corporate plan. And if you think about it, things like flood risk and river pollution are quite significantly impacted by new development. And certainly down on the low Weald and so on, there are some real challenges, but they're not being picked up by the likes of the statutory agencies and the water companies. And that's why we've funded with South East Rivers Trust and others some really good projects to reduce downstream flood risk and to tackle some of those issues. And that's the kind of thing that, frankly, the relatively small sums being talked about here could be used. So I think that's all that's being talked about here, because actually we're not really agreeing any detail, and there's no preconceptions. We're agreeing exactly the same document as was agreed in 2019 when we were under the committee system to take forward. So this appendix is just a reflection of the current corporate plan. I just leave it at that. So I think we just should agree as per the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Russell, you have your round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. I fundamentally disagree, because what will go out is a prospectus. Please apply for our money. And you bet your last pound that it will be phrased, please apply for your money. We'd like to do water cycle schemes. We'd like to do active and sustainable trouble. We'd like to do climate change and adaptation, because it will do, because you're asking infrastructure providers to bid for that money. Now, as been said, it's not a lot of money. It probably won't buy you a brand new anything, but what it would do would be to unlock some of the infrastructure schemes that the cost has risen in recent years since those houses were built. So yes, KCC are the Highways Authority, but it might be with a bit of extra money, they may be able to unlock one of their schemes. That's why we bid and did it for the Bearsted Road. Now, that doesn't negate the bids that can obviously come in, because you can flip this the other way around from St Faith's or anything like that. And in fact, we awarded to those last time. We're going to the vote after this. But what you can see here is a clear priority list, and that is the basis that the prospectus will be sent out on. Yes, I agree, that is probably, they'll come back and they all need to be agreed by Cabinet, but I do think that if it went out without this appendix, then we would truly see all of the bids that come in, and then they could have a look at them. I think that is the much better way of doing it, in the hope that we could get a primary school apply, or a secondary school for an extension, or maybe somebody wants to put a new GP somewhere. I think we need to reach for that infrastructure for our residents. And I think this appendix just narrows it down to things that people do not want from the houses that have been built. I'm not saying they're things that people do not want totally, but this is to mitigate unsuitable development, which is what CIL and 106 is for. So I think we need to be very careful what we spend it on. Thank you.
Can come back to a point of explanation.
A point of explanation.
It was the Cabinet that that you were a member of actually voted against the Linton Crossroads Highway Scheme, which was had a profound benefit for highway safety, and that was done for very narrow political reasons, as we know. So we're not going to take any sermons about not funding highway schemes.
Okay, look, I think if it's a point of explanation.
It is a point of explanation, because he's referenced my position on the previous Cabinet. So as a point of explanation, we tried one scheme to give the money to KCC, which was the Bearsted, and it hasn't been spent. Was there any point in trying to give them more money at that time? I don't think so.
Okay, Mr. Jarman, and I'm definitely moving to the vote on the amendment.
Didn't expect to say this. Is just contextualization, really. So because we're a CIL authority, if we get a planning application, we still use section 106 agreements, particularly on greenfield sites, because in the urban area, most developers, nearly all developers, come up with a viability argument that they haven't got enough money to pay any section 106 monies, because section 106 is discretionary, CIL isn't. It's mandatory, and Maidstone doesn't have an exemptions policy, so you have to pay CIL. This is just for information. So on greenfield sites, what section 106 is used for typically is for the maintenance of open space as part of the development, and for the affordable housing, which is on site. Everything else, as a general rule, is dealt with through the community infrastructure levy.
Thank you for that. I'm now going to move to the vote on the amendment. If you've got the wording of it, Cassie. Do you want to read it out? Do you want to just remind us precise wording on what we're voting?
So as I've written it down was that the proposed specs and timetable for a second round of strategic CIL bidding be agreed, subject to removal. It'll be sorry, I'll go from the beginning. This report so resolve to recommend to Cabinet that the proposed specs and timetable for a second round of strategic CIL bidding be agreed, subject to removal of Appendix 2 from the process.
Thank you for that. Is everyone clear on that then? Okay, can I see those in favour of the amendment, please? Okay, can I see those again? The amendment is lost. So now we revert back to the previous discussion, and I've got Councillor Keeley, Councillor Clark, Councillor Conyard, and Councillor Crennan. If we go in that order, so I'm Claire first.
Thank you. Just there's a couple of observations that I think is worth taking into consideration following some of the discussion before. I hear what Councillor Russell's saying about what the residents she's spoken to are saying, and I think there may be a disparity between rural and town. So that would be worth bearing in mind when you get the applications come in. What assurances are we going to get from KCC that any monies that we go into with them are going to be used after the last fiasco, and you know, this thing's not being built and this money not being spent, and then this money not being enough for what it was then spent for, which we spent on overview and scrutiny a lot of time looking at. So what's going to happen about that? And when is I see that it's the 1st of September that the bidding starts. When's the comms coming out beforehand? It's coming out through various social media and that, but can you give us a timeline, please, of when those comms actually come out and people can start to become aware of it? Thank you.
I don't have. I'll pass the comms question on to someone else. In terms of KCC and assurances, I don't think there are any at all. They can't even. So in terms of the KCC and assurances, I have no idea. They can't even organise themselves to turn up to committee meetings at the moment. So who knows what they're doing? Yeah, there's no assurances there at all. Does anyone have an answer on the comms?
Yeah, forgive me, Councillor Jeffries. Yeah, we'll bring the comms team on board as soon as we get the green light to go ahead with CIL Bidding Round 2. Just to point out, because I think it did crop up earlier, can I just emphasise that no money has gone to Kent County Council? The only was CIL Bidding Round 1, and I think Councillor Jeffries or Councillor Harwood pointed this out. It was resolved that nearly £2 million was supposed to go to Kent County Council for this road scheme, capacity improvement, but that project is on hold, so the money hasn't gone to them. So it's not a matter of KCC have any of our money at the current time.
No, but it is ring fenced and it was proposed for a scheme that hasn't happened. So how can we make sure that it does happen? Because otherwise we're potentially wasting money. We're potentially holding money back from something that it's not being used for. And then that's £2 million. Sorry, I'm just waiting for Tony to finish. That £2 million, for argument's sake, whatever it is, then it's not worth the £2 million it was when it was first proposed for a scheme. So the time, what I'm saying, we're losing time and we're losing value in that money. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they've spent it and we haven't got it back. I'm saying what it was worth 4 years ago is not what it's worth now, and that has a huge impact on what it's spent on.
Yes, I'm sure you're right. The costs have gone up. So logically, I mean, it was obviously Kent County Council Highways' decision to postpone the scheme. I think they went through a new procurement process to approve a different contractor. But yeah, so I'm sure you're right. Costs have gone up. So logically, if there's consistency with the previous decision, then some of the £5 million plus pot should go on the residual for the improvements to Junction 7 of the M20. But at the end of the day, it's councillors who decide upon that.
Can I just ask a question on that point? Because obviously we allocated 1.8 million pounds to that scheme, so that's sort of sitting outside the money we're talking about tonight. But can we, I mean, perhaps we could ask the cabinet member when they consider whatever, the report, what comes out from tonight, to try to contact Kent County Council to try to get an update from them on that scheme, because as Mr. Jarman just said, back in 2022, 1.836 million pound was the balance to actually do that junction improvement, and they haven't done it yet. We're now 3 years down the road. So I think, as you said, even just adding on a bit of inflation, that's going to be over 2 million quid now, I'm sure. And then we must have a time scale with them, because we've had this before with Section 106, where they took money for a whole load of highways improvements, subsequently decided not to do it, and we're still in discussion, I think, on that money. And we don't really want to see this almost 2 million quid fossilised by Kent County Council, who don't proceed with this, yet we can't reallocate it. So I'm just wondering if someone really looking to Councillor Harwood and Councillor Jeffrey as to if they can put some pressure on KCC as part of its consideration of this to try to force this forward so that we're not in this situation. Councillor Clark.
So you're quite correct. We've got a number of Section 106 schemes. We've got some select funding, 14.8 million, in fact. And under the old scheme with Section 106, we used to collect the money on behalf of KCC and hand it over the fence with a view to it's still in safe hands. It's with an authority, and it will be moved towards delivering those schemes. But what we found is that that's not happened. We were looking at 3.85 million at the Wheatsheaf, which is now transpired into a due minimum scheme that still hasn't even been delivered. And part of that delivery is optimization of the traffic lights. So I really don't understand why that's taken the years that it has. But I think it's a much bigger question, because at least we know that with CIL, we don't hand it over until we're ready to go. So I think if we're in a good position in some ways, because we're talking about money that hasn't gone across and been lost with CIL, but we have a much bigger problem with some of the Section 106 which we've collected. There's timeframes associated with it in terms of spend, and many of those schemes which it was collected for do not appear to be going forward. It's a bit of an open discussion at the moment, because the Transport Committee later this month has been postponed at KCC. It might have been something that could have been discussed at that meeting, but we will be. It's an agenda item on the Joint Transport Board, and we'll be working that going forward. But I think the one thing that we can say is at least we've got the money. We haven't just handed it over and it's gone into an abyss. My other point, given is that yes, you come back to me. I'd already mentioned the point that I was going to raise, but it became appropriate for the amendment just now. So I'd just like to propose the papers.
Thank you for that. Are the recommendations as written on page 129? Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. I'll take the names of the people I've got to speak at the moment. So I've got Councillor Conyard, Councillor Grennan, and then Councillor Russell. Okay, so Councillor Conyard.
Sorry, my point was actually to move as per the papers, which Councillor Clark has now done.
Okay, so in which case I'll go to Councillor Brennan.
So I just wanted to say, obviously, I agree with the Appendix 2. I specifically asked to be on this committee because it's about planning and healthier, stronger communities, and that's what we should all be aiming for, is healthier, stronger communities. I've got residents who've got asthma, COPD, other lung issues. Air quality is a real issue. We need to be looking at active and sustainable transport methods. We need to be allowing young people to be able to cycle around the town safely and get to school. We need to be allowed to walk to school safely. And it feels at the moment like everything is about car drivers, car users. There are so many people that walk, wheel, cycle every day, but they always feel like they're the bottom of the list. So that's what I wanted to say.
Councillor Russell and Councillor Forecast.
I'll be quick. I thought we strayed onto JTB there for a second, but luckily we've got the chair, so I'm sure he can find out all of the answers to where that money's gone. And I disagree that we don't, obviously this is a community, a committee that talks about planning and healthier, stronger communities. I completely do understand your point, Councillor Grennan, but facilities for young people are joint sixth. There are real, there's things that we want to do, there's things that we need to do, but there are things that are intrinsically linked to development, of which CIL is one. And I just think that to put water cycle investment at priority number one is overlooking a lot of the intrinsic things to do with planning. I'm not disagreeing. There's a whole other part of the committee which I'm fundamentally invested in, but this specific item relates to specific planning and planning decisions. And I think the remit of this has been stretched beyond all belief. So I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forecast.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to put on record, I share your enthusiasm, Councillor Greenan, for young people. And I know that you mentioned walkers are seemingly bottom of the list. This appendix tells me that young people are indeed bottom of the list in terms of priorities for this cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else wish to make any comment on this? Councillor Clark.
I just wanted to make a brief point, and it is about being progressive in this borough. It costs £500 a year for a child. Let's say, for instance, in South Maidstone, to get a bus to Oakwood Park or Maidstone Grammar. So if you've got two kids in grammar school, it's £1,000. It's very, very difficult for a child to cycle, even though that's quite a small distance. So this is the sort of thing that we can look at with this sort of emphasis. I spoke to the leader of Kent County Council last term, or the previous leader, and I spoke to him about how impacting it can be for a family on the breadline to spend 500 or 1,000 when their child actually passes the 11 plus. And he told me, Mr. Clark, we have a statutory responsibility to get a child to their nearest school. We do not have a statutory responsibility for them to get to a grammar school. Now, given we have a grammar school system within Maidstone, I think that we could do an awful lot more to make people's lives easier if they're on the breadline and they want their children to have the potential or reach their full potential. And I think this is one of the things that this type of initiative can help.
Okay, I'd just like to draw people's attention actually to Appendix B, which starts on page 168, because it may give some assurance to some members, and that shows the scoring criteria, which the office, because that's part of the prospectus, and that shows the scoring criteria the officers will use when they are marking up the bids which come in. And I think you should be able to take some assurance from that it'll be assessed against the local plan, structure delivery plan, the corporate plan, and biodiversity plan. They're all listed in there, and they're having to demonstrate levels of support or not linked to those things. And the decision-making process, as is said in the thing, will be an officer member panel meeting again and evaluating the proposals against that scoring criteria and the appendix. So I think there's an element there which should give us some assurance that the process will be done properly and fair, and a fairly heavy level of scrutiny will be applied in that scoring system, which It's the same similar scoring system to which we used last time around. So I just wanted to point that out. And if there's nothing else, we'll now move to the vote on the recommendation before us that we that the proposed prospectus and timetable for a second round of the strategic CIL bidding be agreed. Can I see those in favour, please? Okay. Can I see those against? Okay, thank you. So that is agreed. Okay, so then if we can go on to agenda item 15, which is the fourth quarter finance update 2024-25, starts on page 173 of our papers. And I understand Councillor Thompson's going to introduce this report tonight.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was my intention, but I am going to ask Mr. Lovegrove to begin. Thank you very much.
So, good evening, everyone. Quick update then on the fourth quarter finance position. Obviously, trying to reflect also where we moved from quarter three. So overall for Maidstone, a improvement in the position. So we were projecting a overspend of about £450,000. Current position for this financial year will then be a underspend of 107. So I think that reflects some of the conversation we've had around putting in controls around recruitment and also just a general push for heads of service to focus on critical spend overall. So hopefully a good position overall for Maidstone itself. In terms of this pack, we've got a overspend of about £680,000, a slight better improvement than quarter three, which was about 840,000. So again, those controls reflecting in that. There are three key areas in revenue where the overspend has happened or under recovery of income in some areas. Broadly the same three areas that we've always had. So that's about 435 around Lockmeadow Complex, and that relates to some of the vacant units. They're now full, so that should be a problem going forward in future years. There's the under recovery of income around the development management income. We know through the budget process we put additional budget in to reflect that loss of income, about £650,000. So again, hopefully less of a problem for this financial year as well. And there was also underspend on the planning policy area, just because of the lower demand of the work needed around the local plan. Capital for this particular committee, expenditure of about 2.1 million, lags behind a little bit of the overall with an underspend of about 7.7. Sort of a couple of key areas were leisure provision, where just the work at the leisure centre has taken a little bit longer. So obviously just timing it all and making sure we've got the relevant people in. But we're hoping a lot of that's work, or I know some of that work has already happened this financial year already, which is good. And certainly infrastructure delivery, just that's usually some priming money if there was going to be some work. Obviously there are no particular schemes that come forward, so no need to support those. So this is just a paper for noting, so no actual recommendations for this, but obviously happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Councillor Russell, anyone else at the moment wants to indicate to speak? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a really quick one on page 182. I'm sure that's meant to be the financial benefit won't be seen until 25-26 for the vacant units. But my question was, when should we look for that? Like what quarter? Because obviously it's quite a large variance, and I suppose in my head I'd just like to get a grip of when I should be looking for that, for the revenue from those vacant units that are now filled to be sort of coming through into our papers that we can see. Thank you.
So they're already filled. So they were filled at the beginning before the financial year. So I know the legal agreements, I can get exact dates, but I know they're already in there at Lockmeadow. So So it'll be the first quarter of this year.
Okay, anyone else want to raise anything on this report? If not, can we agree to note the report? Actually, no, we need to agree. Sorry, there are two recommendations. Yeah, the recommendations are that we note the revenue and then we note the capital position. That agreed? And you're noting. Agreed to note, whatever. Thank you. That takes us then on to agenda item 16, which is the corporate strategy 2025 to 2035, which is the year one action plan. And I think that's going to be introduced to us this evening by Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you. I wish I'd taped yesterday's. It made life so much easier for me. But I'm taking this round to every single pack. As we know, the year one plan went to full council in February. It was designed before LGR, local government reorganisation, we knew much about it. And we said all the way through that actually local government reorganisation is going to have an impact on what we can do this year and what we might want to do this year as well. So we said we might want to take some, be flexible, I suppose, in terms of what we deliver. So we have made a few changes. Hopefully we haven't drastically changed it. We've recognised, and I think this was in the budget, around the additional work that and cost that LGR is going to impact, and we put 100,000 associated with that. We've got three pieces of work which we've combined under the headline of a vibrant town centre, and that's and it talks about an integrated transport strategy, as others will point out, Councillor Clark. That does have a number of meanings. That we were looking at a borough-wide transport strategy, active travel being the focus. We're going to bring that into the town centre and narrow the scope a little bit because we need to free up some work. We've got the heritage strategy which we're going to build into the town centre, the vibrant town centre, and also the work on creative makerspace that we mentioned in the year one plan. So those three are brought into a single project. Others have been narrowed in scope, such as the one pump track instead of two, one citizens assembly, and I note your comments yesterday, Councillor Harper, around making sure we get the learning from that so we can do follow-ups, etc. The Gypsy and Traveller stuff's there as well. I'm not going to dive into that. We obviously have deferred a couple of small bits. You'll disagree. One around the leisure centre, leisure facilities. The feeling is that the leisure centre has got some life in it left. There's been a lot of investment, starting with the previous cabinet, and I'm sure Claudine will champion that. So it's in a reasonable state. So we kind of feel that we don't need to do that straight away. And also around the work around developing lifelong learning. That's quite a long piece of work. So we've kind of parked those two bits. Everything else is pretty much as was. So I'm hoping that it will be reasonable for the committee to accept.
Thank you for your introduction. It would be remiss of me, given that everyone knows my view on the leisure centre, not to say that I am disappointed that it isn't featuring in year one. I think, and I was talking to Councillor Cox last night after the meeting, is if we had have left it in, we may have got to a situation by the time we're being dissolved, so in 2028, that the scheme would be to a point where it's unlikely a unitary council would have cancelled it. And once you've got, the plans in place, you've got all your land and all the rest of it. Anyway, that's water under the bridge largely because it's not proposed to be done as part of year one, but I thought I just needed to raise that as I did last night. After that, I open this to debate. So I've got Councillor Russell. Anybody else at the moment? Yeah, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of bits from me. So the integrated transport strategy has been changed to the town centre movement strategy. But coming off of what we were talking for the last thing with CIL, the point is that the movement between the rural areas and the town centre is absolutely horrendous. And when we were saying about getting CIL for some buses and movement as well, you know, I can say I put my kids on the bus at 7:10 in the morning in Marden and they're late for school. That's how horrific it is to get from the outside of our borough to the inside on a daily basis. So I'm actually quite disappointed. I mean, it's convenient to change it to the town centre because it's more contained, and I'm aware that we've got a majority in the administration of like town centre members, but I think that it's a shame that we couldn't look at some wider things to help with some form of an integrated transport strategy, movement strategy. I do appreciate that what you've had to do is condense it on into year one. So I think I just want that comment to be in your mind. I'm not saying, you know, rush out and change this. I'm just saying that is really, really a big problem now. And they leave school at 3 o'clock and they don't get home till 10 to 5. That's a really long time for like teenagers to be on a bus and trying to do their GCSEs. And in fact, because they're doing their GCSEs at the moment, like, you know, it's amazing that I've survived. We're actually driving them to school to make sure that they make school. So we're adding one more car despite paying for a KCC bus pass, because I cannot guarantee that he's going to make the start of his exams at 8:45, which is a bit of an issue. The other thing that I was just wanting to say was that when we had full council, I felt a little bit unfairly lambasted that I don't care about violence against women and girls. I mean, I intrinsically care about it, but also it did appear on quite a bit of election literature. But my point was not that at all. Wakefield Council, Tower Hamlets, Haringey Council, Ealing Council, Manchester, Croydon and Havering are all councils that have brought their violence against women and girls through scrutiny. They've done their work through scrutiny, which is a mechanism that we already have in the council, is already fully funded, is already working on certain items. And in fact, I did mention it to Councillor Cleater when she came along. Why don't you bring that to scrutiny? And before it came up as a topic, that's exactly what we were going to do. So my issue is absolutely nothing to do with the very topic that we need to look into. It's the mechanism for how we do that. So that brings me on to, you've had to like narrow the scope to deliver one citizens' assembly on violence against women and girls, deferring the assembly for transport. And if I remember correctly, in the budget, that had £100,000 per annum revenue price tag. So my question is, does that now mean that that is all we're going to do with the £100,000? Or does, you know, was it two topics, £50,000 each, and now this is £50,000 and we've saved, well, potential saving of £50,000? I think these are big numbers, and we just need to be conscious when we have other mechanisms for doing work, why we're going down a new avenue to try and do a new thing. And especially if we're just only going to be able to do one topic now. So that's my main question. And then my other supplementary is, where's the affordable housing? I can't see it anywhere, and it might just be because it's business as usual and you're not highlighting it, but I would really like you to highlight it, because it was a thing that was cross-party. We set it running. You know, I know it was 1,000 affordable houses. I know the number's gone, but I just, when you're talking about your priorities for year one, and it's not really referenced or written about, it does actually really concern me. So they're my two main questions. Thank you.
No, thank you. Affordable housing is absolutely in the business as usual pot. It's carrying on. There's no change to that plan at all. We have cross-party agreements on it, and it is very, very valuable to deliver that, and we will continue to do that. I absolutely hear your comments around travel around the county. I really wanted to do the full borough-wide thing. We simply do not have the capacity with all the rest of it going on. I have utmost sympathy for people who have to travel by bus. If there is any tactical stuff we can do during the year, we will do it. But as you know, the changes, particularly at KCC, may cause who knows. But we will do what we can. And the Citizens Assembly, yes, again, it's a capacity thing. However, there may be a saving. We don't know. We haven't got figures in yet. I hope there is, and that'd be nice. But as I said right at the start, we will look at making sure we get learning from that, and so forth. So it kind of gives us the potential for another bite of the cherry. We will have to be tactical at various points. I would have loved to have done the whole lot straight off, but we just need to make sure officer time is flexed so that we can deliver the new agenda that we've been landed with.
Okay, Councillor Green.
Just going back to what Councillor Russell said, my understanding of the town centre movement strategy was that we had that KCC plan that we said was absolutely awful, and this is going to be something where it's smaller, but due to the time we can actually maybe do something to make a difference. But I appreciate obviously buses and connections is a lot bigger picture than just doing that, but that was my understanding. Due to the short time period, we could focus just on certain key routes. What else was I going to say? The greening of the town centre, I just wanted to say that's made a really nice difference to the town centre. I was looking at some pictures that I took last year, and when you look at it now, I can already see the difference just with some photos I've taken. And lots of residents have been commenting on the work we're doing, the lampposts and the plants that are coming in, and we've got other exciting projects coming up. And I think that's really going to make a difference to the town centre. Green flag for Brenchley, I really hope that we manage to attain it. Team have been working really hard in Brenchley Gardens. It's a really lovely place to go at the weekends. Families are hanging out there, dog walkers, kids are hanging out. It's so different to how it was a couple of years ago. And I just want to say well done to everybody at the council who's been working hard on Brenchley Gardens. And please, let's all talk the town centre up and say what a great place it is now. I hear negative comments posted on social media, and I think you have not been to Brenchley Gardens. If you were there Sunday, when I was sitting there enjoying it outside, you wouldn't be making these comments. And my final comment was, as a renter in the centre of town, well done for putting in a quality local rental market, because we do need to ensure that people are living in decent quality homes in the borough.
Thank you for that. Any other comments anyone like to make on this? No, if not, I draw people's attention to page 186, where it's asking us to make the following recommendations to Cabinet: that the revised Year 1 action plan be approved. Is that seconded? I'll move it. If it's seconded, good. Okay, can I see all those in favour, please? Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. All right. So that's approved, which takes us on to our final item tonight, which is agenda item 17, which is Rural England Prosperity Fund 2025 to 26 investment plan. And I think that's going to be introduced by Councillor Stephen Thompson from the Cabinet. Sorry, and also we've got on the system, we've got Chris Ingwood from Economic Development to assist Stephen and to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So some brief remarks to me before we hear from Chris Ingwood. Your paper's on page 200. 2.1, the Rural England Prosperity Fund is a rural top-up allocated as an addendum to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The Rural England Prosperity Fund supports the aims of two of government's missions: to kickstart economic growth and break down barriers to opportunity, as well as the farming and countryside programme. I won't take you through the rest of the items, but I do want to draw your attention at 2.9 to the indicative list of eligible work examples, to draw some parallels with a previous conversation. it is the priority of this cabinet to respect, encourage, facilitate and underpin the agency of our partners. We do not think that we are driving ideas, be that for the protection of nature, for the purity of water, for the maintenance of our environment, off our own bat. We're drawing the opportunity to the attention of our partners, indeed to business, to be able to do these things. It's been my privilege at events at the Business Terrace to see how businesses have turned up without any prompt or invitation, any explicit invitation from us. They've simply come in to the Business Terrace to tell us how they are greening their businesses to their own benefit, even to the benefit of their competitors and to the benefit of the community at large. At 2.9, you can see therefore this indicative list: repurposing vacant or underused commercial premises, new community shops, purchase and installation of new manufacturing equipment, the heading of green adaptations, new commercial ovens for rural bakeries, signage or interpretation boards of tourism venues, purchase and installation of IT and electronic point of sale equipment, high street shopfront improvements, creation of new commercial or tourism spaces, such as the conversion of existing farm buildings, vending machines, and glamping facilities. These are simply indicative examples. That is not a prescriptive list. I am already thoroughly convinced of the creativity, invention, and adaptability of our business partners. I've seen this time and time again. I'm looking forward to presenting you with a completely different list of inventions and creations of the applicants for this fund. So I commend these papers to you, and I shall pass over to Chris Inwood to give you some more of the technical detail. Thank you, Chris.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Hopefully you can hear me. Unfortunately, I can't see you guys. I've got a blue screen. So just following on from Councillor Thompson's introduction, some more sort of technical elements of the scheme. It's important to point out to members that this is for capital projects only. The funding cannot be spent on revenue projects. And underneath the REPF capital funding, they've given a description. So it is to support new and existing rural businesses develop new products and facilities that will be of a wider benefit to the local economy. This does include farm businesses looking to diversify income streams. However, it cannot be used to support other DEFRA schemes for the farming community to fund farm machinery or diversify within agriculture. The council's allocation for this fund is just shy of £162,000. And we've got quite a tight timescale to actually get this money delivered out to our rural economy. So all funds have to be spent by the end of this financial year, and any remaining funds must be returned to central government. So taking in the RAPF guidance, etc., the council's recommended approach to supporting the rural economy and this funding is to launch a rural investment capital grant. We're proposing that the grant will be open to all eligible business sectors, but have a specific focus on the local economy, green initiative businesses, food and drink producers, and our hospitality businesses. The scheme would provide grants between £500 and £15,000, again, all to facilitate projects and commercial premises in the rural areas that will improve productivity, operational processes, and support the business's viability and growth. As part of our proposal, you'll see in 2.10, we're proposing a grant of 80% with 20% match funding required from the business. We are proposing that it's very similar to the previous UK Shared Prosperity Rural Fund, that applications will be via the council's website, the Dash platform, and we will collect relevant data and information from each organisation as part of our due diligence and financial due diligence. Within the application process, we will ask businesses to explain in detail what they will use the funding for. And due to the tight timescale we have to deliver this funding, estimated turnarounds, and ensuring that the business has the resources in place to complete the project within the timescales provided. Like the previous iteration of the Rural England Prosperity Fund, there will be a final decision making panel to give the approval and to ensure that it matches the eligibility criteria for the scheme. The economic development team will put a shortlist to the panel who will not have been previously involved with the applications until this time. It is proposed that the panel will comprise of 2 councillors, including the Cabinet Member for Healthier, Stronger Communities. In addition, the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance, and myself as Economic Development Manager. We will also seek an independent stakeholder not affiliated with the council with an experience in rural businesses to assist with making that decision process. So we're here today to ask for the recommendation that we proceed with the grant as in 2.8 and 2.10, which would then give the Director of Strategy and Insights and Governance the delegated responsibility for awarding grants in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Healthier and Stronger Economies. I'd be happy to take some questions.
Thank you for that, Chris. I've got a question or suggestion I'd just like to put forward before we open to debate. Only in terms of the decision panel you refer to in paragraph 2.13. Obviously, it refers to 2 councillors, one of whom logically should be the relevant Cabinet Member. And I was just wondering whether, in terms of good governance, whether perhaps the second councillor could be perhaps a rural councillor from one of the 2 non-administration parties, just to provide transparency. I don't know. Yeah, that's just
I'm sure we can look at that, Chair.
Yeah. I just thought it would make it more rounded, and I think give better decision making. So
thank you.
Anyway, I'll now throw it open. I've got Councillor Russell. Start.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really good way of looking at this pot of funding. I was just going to offer a suggestion, actually. I'm sure, whilst I have no doubt that the Maidstone Borough Council Dash platform is extremely easy to complete an application on, I just wonder if there might be some thought given to like whether you could put something like "don't be put off," that you have to fill it out online. If you email this person, they will help you do an application if you've got a great idea. That's not being disparaging to the rural sector. I work in the rural sector. I'd much rather be out in my fields than filling in the excellent application on the Dash platform. But so I just wondered if you could give some thought just to.
Absolutely.
Any other points from anybody? No. If not, can we go to the recommendations on page 197, which is that we recommend to the Cabinet that the Rural Investment Grant Scheme be approved and that the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance be delegated shouldn't it be given delegated responsibility for awarding grants in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Healthier and Stronger Communities? Is that seconded? And I assume we all agree with it? Yeah, excellent. That brings us to the end of the meeting, and so I'd just like to thank everybody for coming and see you in July.